August 9th, 2025. My birthday, huh? And at any rate, so we'll get into three topics in this one. Of course, I think the big one, well, they're all kind of big, aren't they? Let's. I think the big one though is that Trump and Putin are going to meet to try to negotiate an end to the Ukraine-Russia war next Friday. So that a week away there on that one. And of all things, it's going to be in Alaska. And then, of course, we have the ongoing saga of the Democrats running away from Texas that don't want to vote on the redistricting because they don't have the majority to stop it, or even enough votes to stop it. And of course, now Trump has thrown another bomb out there, which is the idea of doing a new census to try to correct the errors in the last census. So I'll try to hit all these there. First up, we'll do with the situation with the negotiations with Putin. It started off that Wyckoff goes to Moscow and meets with Putin for, I guess, 3 hours, and they come out with a plan that they can try to negotiate have a meeting to negotiate the end of the Ukraine war, and there was a little bit of confusion for a while, but at this point in time, as of this recording, it looks like it's on. It will happen next Friday. That'll be the 15th of August. So we'll have to see how. I mean, this is a kind of a shock to me. I mean, we were of course going into the ultimatum as I've been discussing repeatedly. The 100% tariffs that were supposed to be imposed on everybody that was buying oil from Russia. And of course, then I guess around Wednesday, about the time of the Wyckoff meeting or thereabouts, Trump imposed a 25% extra tariff on India for buying oil from Russia, to which apparently India has responded that they're going to stand their ground and not quit buying oil from Russia. So I guess there'll be another 50% tariff at least until something else happens. So far, nothing's happened on China, but then the Chinese deadline on their regular negotiation is next Tuesday, the 12th. So that's coming right up too, and possibly the oil situation will also be part of that scenario. And then, of course, we have the situation for Russia itself. It's just a question of, what kind of a deal they can get, and it looks like at this point, Putin is pushing for some significant concessions from Ukraine, namely that the Donbass area would be vacated and left to Russian control. We don't know all the other details. It's possible that some of the other incursions that Russia's made might be given up. That's unclear or not. Right now, as we're making this video, the war is ongoing. I mean, the Russians are beginning to storm Potrovsk, and they're storming areas around Lima in the north and areas in the middle. It's Service, I pronounce it. And there's a couple of others. So the Russian offensive is kind of underway. This is their big summer offensive, and it should be rolling on until the rainy season sometime in probably late September. And so it's an interesting point that obviously from Trump's point of view and from the NATO point of view, let's call it, also, and I'm not sure Trump and NATO are on the same exact page, they would like to stop the Russian offensive before it's successful, because it might be successful in another 6 or 7 weeks. On the other hand, the 100% or greater draconian sanctions, we don't know, that has a lot of other angles to it. I've said before, I wasn't sure that Trump really wanted to do this. I think he's under pressure from the Senate and the House, the Congress, to do it. All the hawks in Congress, and I guess the Democrats are become hawks now. Where have all the peaceniks gone, right? They used to code pink and everything else. Always protesting. The only thing they'll protest now, I guess, is Israel. But at any rate, the point I'm getting at is that they're all willing to put this pressure to vote this gigantic 500% sanction on it. 100% or 500%, it probably doesn't matter too much. At that level, trade pretty much dies. So they won't be paying anything because they won't be trading. Or we won't be paying anything to buy it because we won't be buying it from. How are we going to put that? So that's where we kind of are, and we'll have to see what comes of this. And what's Putin's motivation? Is he scared of the sanctions? Well, I don't know. Maybe he is. I mean, I've said all along it was unclear to me how much pressure that was. Or does this have something to do with the Chinese? Notice that there's been no extra sanction taken on the Chinese as we lead in, like there has been India. And I often said that I thought that India was the weaker one of the group potentially, although at present they seem pretty tough. And China hasn't done it, budged at all. And remember, they have the option of holding up the rare earth minerals if we don't make the right deal from their point of view. So, but on the other hand, they probably don't want 100% or 500% or whatever percent sanction on them either. So it looks like there could be some doings between Russia and China that could be leading to some of these decisions. Although, and maybe that's what led to the boycott. It's hard to know. There seems to be like there may be some back channeling going on here that we don't know about. And like, here's the thing. I also seem to think, maybe from Putin's point of view, just guessing, that he may be gambling that, well, first of all, it's obviously he's not going to take all of Ukraine. That never was going to happen. He doesn't want to take all of Ukraine either. So, that's one thing. So where do you stop this thing? And of course, I mean, presumably a little bit further, if he can get Donbass for free, he pretty much has Lyman in the bag. And there might be some other trades that might be made around the edges in Zaporizhia. And I've often said that a rational settlement would probably not have the Russians on the west side of the Dnieper River for obvious reasons. That's a good strategic defense barrier to give some security to Ukraine, right? So it looks like this could be what's in play. The problem is, of course, I think will be, Europe and Ukraine. Do they want to make any concessions at all? I mean, the Ukraine position seems to be no concessions of anything. Not Crimea, not the things that Russia's conquered, nothing. Russia has to lose and Russia has to leave. And in spite of the fact they're winning, they've got to quit. That seems to be their position up to now. And the question is, can Trump actually, no matter what deal he makes with them, it looks like they may balk. and that may be what Putin is counting on. In other words, he's telling everybody to stand with me, China, India, etc., and I will try to make a deal to end this so these tariffs don't happen. But if it blows up because of Ukraine, then it ain't my fault, and therefore maybe they'll stand with him, and therefore the thing goes forward. And that may be what he's counting on. Or alternatively, if they do make the deal, then he gets a lot of territory that they'd have to fight for another year to get probably. And so, with all the expense involved in not just the casualties, but also the money and resources. And there have been a few discussions made on the Russian side about backing off on the military spending at some point in the relatively near future. This would be a way to do that. So anyway, that's kind of what's up in the air, and we'll have to wait to Friday. I was always wondering where they'd have the meeting. Alaska? Putin is actually going to come on U.S. soil. However, we're not a signature to the treaty, which would require him to be arrested, and presumably will respect diplomatic immunity. Otherwise, we get into some really messy situations of mutual hostages, I guess. I mean, if we took Putin hostage, I presume they would take our embassy staff and any American in Russia hostage, and then we'd take their embassy staff hostage, and then you can see what I mean. It would be an ugly scene. So I don't think we're going to do that. I think he will be able to safely return. However, I don't want to tick off Trump on Trump's soil. The Emirates might have been a nicer place to meet anyhow, with all those, you see those Emirates commercials. Anyway, I'll leave that as it. So that's that. We'll have to wait on how that turns out. However, maybe there's hope to end this war, maybe. Moving on to the domestic front, which I promised. Of course, the Democrats are still holding out at the moment, and I hear they're not going to get their pay and per diem or whatever that they would be getting. Exactly what they're doing is that they're going to require them to come back to pick up the paper check that they will be delivered in rather than have it deposited in their account. So if they want to get their money, they have to come back, in which case they're there. You see what I mean? They won't let them out. So far, that's ongoing. But the big bombshell, I think, that's kind of going on, I know there's attempts to get other states to also try to redistrict, and then the Democrats are threatening to counter. Um, but now Trump's thrown another one in the whole situation, and it's the idea of doing a new census. Now, I'm not sure how legal that would be, and I'm sure there'd be a court challenge. And also, we're well into August now, so that's getting. I mean, when will we get this thing finished? Sometime, I guess, next year. And then have time to redistrict all the districts based on a new census, but in time for the off election. Very interesting. Hey, you never know with Trump. He may pull it off. I don't know. But it's going to be obviously fought in the courts. And he hasn't thrown another ringer in the whole thing, which is interesting, is the idea of not counting illegal immigrants, which to me makes sense. Now, I'm not an expert on the law on this. I do know that the history was that you count the resident population. And the idea of citizenship wasn't really. I'm not sure that citizenship in the modern sense was even applicable when the Constitution was written. I mean, maybe it was, but I mean, it's not quite with paperwork and, well, at any rate, it's not quite the same thing. And at the time, I know that because, that's when slavery still existed, the South insisted on their slaves counting 3/5 of a head for the census. And so that gave them more representation, which kind of is a precedent for the illegal aliens being counted in a way. So people that are not given constitutional rights, which they weren't at the time until the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed. So after Civil War. So at any rate, I think there's a case to say that, well, for instance, I don't presume that foreign students on student visas should be counted as citizens, or just tourists, or other people they're obviously not citizens, representatives of foreign embassy staffs, and so forth. Well, one could argue also illegal aliens shouldn't be counted either. Now, resident non-citizens, I presumably, would be counted still. That is, those that have work permits and are legally here, maybe short of a green card even, and of course those with green cards would be counted, as well as all naturalized and native-born citizens would be counted. But maybe illegal immigrants wouldn't be, and they'd be treated pretty much like, foreign embassy staff members and tourists and people like that. And if that was the case, we could then reduce the representation of various places and presumably strengthen the representation of Republican states. But this is going to set the Democrats off like nobody's business. And there will be, the Supreme Court's got to be shaking their head, not again, please, because it's going to be another court battle, which would almost have to be decided by the Supreme Court if it goes forward. So at any rate, those are the big events as of this date. I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below, and I'll be posting on X most frequently about follow-up comments on here, or I might put something in the comment below sometimes. So check back then on that, and all for now.